talking about what Michigan's record could be in 12 games this year and what is more likely. And I'm going to throw these things at you, and I know you're not prepared for them, and I think it might be.
I love it. I love it.
Okay. I was going to say you may hate it, but I think it's going to be a better product. What is more likely for Michigan this year? 12-0 or 6-6? And you can be honest. Don't pander to the crowd, JD.
Yeah, no. Let's get down to brass tacks here. 12-0 or 6-6. Going 12-0 with a true freshman quarterback, man, that would really shock me. So like if they're going, if those are my two options, like I'll probably lean 6-6. Just because too, like even the Oklahoma game at Oklahoma, Nebraska, I think is going to be more frisky than people realize, which I know Michigan fans are like, here we go again, Groundhog Day, telling us about Nebraska being sneaky. We've heard that now for the last 4 years. I think actually, like I know it's the boy who cried wolf, but I think actually it's going to be true. Like I think that the Big Ten in itself has so little, like, at least for who Michigan draws, I don't see like a ton of separation between like the USCs and the Washingtons, and you got to go to Michigan State, which Michigan State shouldn't be a problem for Michigan, but like still it's a rivalry game and it's on the road. Like, for sure. Who the heck knows? So I'll to answer your question in a straight fashion, I'm going to say 6-6 is more likely than going 12-0, paired with Ohio State still being one of the most talented teams in college football.
I think it's close, but I agree with you. I think it's a lot easier to go 6-6 in college football. You have an injury here, an injury there. There's less depth on rosters now, so you could kind of implode. I think 6-6 would be kind of viewed here as a bit of a disaster, but they were also they were going to go 6-6 if they didn't beat Ohio State last year and win by 3 points as 19.5-point underdogs. It was very possible they were going 6-6 a year ago with all the talent they had. I think you may have a little more balance on the roster this year. You have a coaching staff coming back for a second season, a new offensive coordinator that seems like he'll provide a boost, but you could see it playing out maybe that way, partly due to injury, partly because of the youth at quarterback, because you did lose 3 top 100 draft picks and some other talent, that you had 4 actually top 100 draft picks, and 3 of them in the first round. Josiah Stewart came in, I think, 92. So, I do think that I would lean 6-6. Now, the next one is 11-1 or 7-5. Which one is more likely?
I still think we're in the territory of you need a lot to go right in my mind to go 11-1. Just because it's so volatile. Like, everything we said about 6-6 versus 12-0, I think to me still holds to where the toughest talent test is obvious. It's Ohio State, but to beat Ohio State, to beat Washington, to beat USC, to beat Oklahoma, like there's landmines all over the place to where I don't feel good enough about my question marks with Michigan to just have it be a total check box. I'm gonna lean 7-5 here, Clayton. I'll say 7-5 more likely than 11-1. For the kind of the same discussion points you just made of there's so many variables that we're still wait and see about. They could pop and it would happen and be awesome. And I don't think anybody listening to this podcast would be disappointed if Bryce Underwood was the man from day one and they won 11 ball games. But 7-5 is more likely to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was torn on this one too. I may lean 11-1 because I don't respect this schedule as much as maybe a lot of other people do. I do think Nebraska could be pretty good. I think Oklahoma could be pretty good. I think there's so much riding on the Oklahoma game. If you get past that, then you have a little bit of a cushion, and not necessarily to go 11-1. To me, the goal this year is to go 10-2. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But because then that gets you in to the college football playoff. But you have a buffer to work with if you beat Oklahoma. You have Nebraska. Going to USC is challenging because Big Ten teams went 6-27 traveling across multiple time zones last year. And Penn State almost went out there and lost in Penn State, but I don't necessarily think USC is going to be a great team. Washington's boom or bust to me. They're kind of my surprise team in the Big Ten, but that game's at home. I think you handle Michigan State. I love the Purdue, Northwestern, Maryland stretch leading into Ohio State, I think sets up. So I think things could go their way, but back to the point that we made about 7-5 and 6-6, there's a lot more downside Like things could go a lot worse than they could go incredibly well, because you can only go,
Mhm.
you can only have so good of a record, but you could blow up as well. So the math would say probably take 7-5, but I'm going to lean 11-1 to be a little optimistic.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I don't know if we're going this direction of the 8-4 versus 10-2.
That
So
is
I don't
next.
want to. Okay, I don't. Okay, I will bite my tongue then.
Well, go ahead. I mean, 10-2 or 8-4, just take it however you want to.
I mean, I think I'm sitting with this one, and I'm probably saying the same thing that you have communicated to your audience here. But like, I'm just looking at that first stretch up to USC. Like, just split Oklahoma and Nebraska. Like, whatever you think of John Mateer, whatever you think of Dylan Raiola, I think Michigan candidly beats Nebraska. We did a record prediction for Nebraska today, and I have them losing to Michigan. So, assuming that's the case, assuming you at least get one of those two, maybe you get both, whatever, you roll into the game against USC, and if you beat USC, you're 5-1, staring down the barrel of Washington, who you play at home. Obviously, Ohio State, you play at the crib, and I don't think Michigan fans are feeling nervous about that one. Maybe nervous is the wrong word. I don't think they're intimidated about that one. Like,
Sure.
if you get to the month of November and you have 1 to 2 losses, if I'm a Michigan fan, I'm like, okay, we're good. Like, just get us to Ann Arbor, get Ohio State in the building, lock the gate, 9 wins, get our 10th playoff. Like, so to answer your question, I would lean closer to 10-2 than 8-4, because I think if you're 8-4, I think you've dropped Oklahoma and Nebraska, and I don't think that's going to happen from a momentum standpoint.
I like that. No, you're right. You're right. I think that's a good point, because if you can weather that, then you are thinking, okay, get us to Ohio State at the end of the season, and that, if you have 9 wins at that point, then you're going for 10. I think they could easily have 9 going into that game. I could think they could have 10 potentially going into that game.
Yeah.
I lean 10-2. I picked Michigan 10-2. I actually said that 10-2 and 8-4 are the 2 most likely scenarios. So, and that sounds weird, but I have this theory, and it may be going to the wayside a little bit in college football because we're seeing rosters change. We're seeing more teams in the mix, but entering the 2021 season, everyone had Michigan 7-5 or 8-4. They were coming off the 2020 year, and everyone's saying, well, you probably split, Wisconsin at Penn State, that sort of thing. Maybe they go 8-4, 9-3, 7-5 if you're really pessimistic. And then it turns out they just won all those games because they were a little bit better than those teams, and that's kind of how it works in college football. Then they beat Ohio State, so then they went 11-1. That you had the 1 loss to Michigan State. But my theory is, like, if you can beat Oklahoma, you're probably good enough to beat Nebraska, which means you're probably good enough to go to USC. I think it's changing. My theory is going to be put to the test in this new era, because it's going to be closer to the NFL than ever before, and one injury here could change how a team looks throughout the course of a season. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I'm a theory guy.
No, I mean, that's what we're here for. I mean, in the month of July, dude, I'm here for all the theories and then some. But I do think, like, momentum, even though it wasn't really a massive factor, it felt like for Michigan last year. I guess the end of the year you could say it was. But, like,
Right.
Bryce Underwood getting something under his belt in that first month and a half of the season, like the USC game to me really is the hinge point to where this whole thing can get rolling. If you can be a 1 or 2 loss team heading into November, I don't think they're dropping a game to, Northwestern or to anybody they shouldn't lose a game to. So, yeah, it's one of those things too. When you look at the way they finish the year, it's going to be a nice. There's a lot of good runways. It feels like for Michigan, like the runway in November, the runway after the Washington. Like, I like the way it sets up. I really do. So if Bryce Underwood can get comfortable and have some, confidence for the passing game and all those things, we know the vintage Michigan game is going to be there. We know the ground game, the defense, all those things. It's just a matter. I think you probably said this ad nauseum on this platform. Like, it's about the Bryce Underwood horsepower and when and if that light bulb comes on. And is it, week 2 at Oklahoma, or is it, in the bowl game? Like, we don't know.
Right. Totally. You mentioned you picked Michigan to beat Nebraska in your Nebraska season prediction. Do you have like a big spreadsheet? Because you can't overlap, right? Then when you're doing Michigan, you have to pick. Is that challenging for you having to do all these videos?
That's a good question. Not so. It has been in the past for sure. I don't think it is so much now because we can go back and check. So to answer your question, no spreadsheet, but especially for teams like Michigan, who like candidly, I don't have Michigan going 7-5, so I'm like, okay, there's less to sort out there. It gets a little more sticky when you go into like the ACC. You're like, what do we have Wake Forest at? What was North? You know what I mean? Like, then you're maybe in the weeds a little bit more, but no, not so much for the Michigans of the world.
No, that makes sense. I feel like you will get called out though if you pick Michigan to
100%.
lose to Nebraska
100%.
or like flip flop the other way. But I like that, and everyone go check out JD's videos on. I mean, no one previews the college football season better, like daily, than JD Pickell.